So there's a different sort of mentality, but the hypocrisy of the whole thing that gets me, they're not making the game safer by eliminating kickoffs. What they can do is go into court and say, we're trying to make the game safer. Look, we've eliminated kickoffs. And here's the thing about the NFL. They know, and you've heard me say this, I'm sure, Jody. They know nobody's changing the channel. So they don't care. They can say, we'll do this and we can put this and we have it as a legal argument. They're still going to watch. That's where I think we are in the NFL.
Hour number 2 of Birds 365, rolling on this Tuesday get-together, McMullen and McDonald together. J-Mac, what years were you a Viking beat guy?
90, I have to look at, it's about 95 to 2000, early 2000 aughts. Man, things run together. It's about 90, Denny Green era.
The Denny Green era.
Denny Green, Mike Tice era. I recognize things more by era than year, Jody, sadly.
Yeah, not a bad way to look at it. And the time you were there, I'm sure that Bud Grant was still a revered figure in Minnesota.
He's still
Would that be a fair statement?
Still. Today, he's still a revered figure. I think he just had his birthday. It's like 90, 95. Bud Grant.
Well into his 90s and still making statements about the National Football League. Well into his 90s. The former Viking head coach who got them to a Super Bowl just couldn't find a way to win one of those Super Bowls. But a guy who will... Bud Grant gets Nick Foles-like respect in Minnesota that they will forever remember what he did when he was there. He's in the news again. He's once again talking about, and I've heard reports on this before, but he's I guess somebody brought it up, and he was somewhat outspoken about it, that he thinks the National Football League is missing the boat on touchbacks, catches.
Me and Bud, we're together on that, man.
And kneel downs. I consider myself a bit of an old school guy. I think you're an old school guy. Certainly Bud Grant is an old school guy. But you also have to be able to read the room. Maybe Bud just doesn't care to read the room anymore.
Doesn't give a you-know-what.
Yeah. He's so motivated to be old school that he is completely either disregarding of and or doesn't care about the fact that the National Football League has become a protective organization. They have gone out of their way to let everyone know how much they are worried about injuries and the like. A lot of it has to do with lawsuits that were filed against them by former players, concussion, CTE, and the like. At age 90, whatever he is, 92, 93, 94, Bud Grant is just coming out and going, yeah, take your panties off, okay? All right, let's get back to playing football. Let's go blood and guts.
I would say a lot. You said a lot of it is to future litigation. There's the only part we disagree, Jody. All of it is about future litigation. If I
can't go at 99%. I gotta go 100.
I'm gonna go 100.0. If I could go to 110, I'd go to 110. So that's my problem with it. Look, I've always said, if you want to have the conversation, I'll have the conversation, but make it honest. I don't like the hypocrisy of it. They call me old school, call me whatever you want. Bud's the same way. Nobody eliminating, and they haven't eliminated, but they've effectively shuttered one of the most exciting plays in football, the kick return, to a degree where it just doesn't matter that much anymore. It hasn't made the game safer. And they'll trot out these numbers, and there's so many injuries on kickoffs, and we've eliminated percentage of kickoffs. It's all public relations. It's all sleight of hand. They haven't made the game safer.
Oh, I
I've
think
always
they.
said
You really believe that? Oh, I
no.
think they
Yeah,
absolutely have made the game safer. They've
I
also
don't.
made it more boring, and they don't want to acknowledge the boring aspect and taking exciting
Well, first,
elements out of it.
here's what I'll say. First of all, you have to define safety. Number one,
That's fair.
and number two, their definition of safety is strictly head injuries. Like nobody cares about torn ACLs or torn pecs or torn Achilles or have you. And look, I get it. You know, long term head injuries are certainly apt to be more serious. But when people talk about safety, first of all, I don't even think they define safety correctly. And that's where I said, I'll have the honest conversation. Football is a violent game. And I respect because there are certain people. There's a writer by the name of Irv Mushnick, and I've had great debates with him on this. And he's one of those guys that says, we shouldn't play football. And I have tremendous respect for Irv. He mainly talks about it youth wise because of kids and they don't have the ability to make decisions. Adults should be able to do what they want to do. But, and I respect that. I do. I'll have that conversation. You can't make a violent game unviolent. Can't do it. Can't do it. So, if everybody knows it, and again, I'm talking about adults, if everybody knows what the game is, and oh, by the way, everybody knows what the game is because I've not the mentality of a 22-year-old player versus a 52, 62-year-old ex-player is the problem. Look, you don't care about any even people, everybody can relate to the fact. You can relate to it, I can relate to it. When we were 22 years old, we were kind of indestructible. You're not worried about anything. And, now that we're our age, Jody, you start to think about different things. I got up today, my foot hurt. Why the hell? I don't know. I didn't do anything. Just thinking hurt. It sucks getting older. So there's a different sort of mentality, but the hypocrisy of the whole thing that gets me, they're not making the game safer by eliminating kickoffs. What they can do is go into court and say, we're trying to make the game safer. Look, we've eliminated kickoffs. And here's the thing about the NFL. They know, and you've heard me say this, I'm sure, Jody. They know nobody's changing the channel. So they don't care. They could say, we'll do this and we can put this and we have it as a legal argument. They're still going to watch. That's where I think we are in the NFL. Right. I'd love for the union. Sorry, one more and I'll let you go. I'd love for the union and the league to get together and admit this is a violent game. Let's get on the same page. People want to play it, you can play it. If you don't want to play it, don't play it. It's pretty simple to me.
Well, if it were that easy, it would be that simple, but it's not because the players want to reserve the right to potentially sue the league for major
Everything's
injuries
about money,
after the
yeah.
fact. Right. Yeah. So it's not that simple. Here's where it is simple. I think they have actually made the game safer. I think they have done so for a very greedy reason, so as not to get sued down the road, not out of the goodness of their heart, not out of the protection of their players. No, they're protecting themselves from future lawsuits. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in because they always wrap it in our care for the health of our players. No, you don't. They're changeable parts for you in the long run that you're going to be able to cash in billions of dollars for. That's where the hypocrisy gets me. Not that they haven't attempted to make it safer. They have, and they've succeeded. But there is a reason, there's a method to their madness as to why they're doing it. And I think they always try and shroud it in something that it isn't really. But they don't acknowledge the fact that the game is more boring than it used to be. Because as you correctly pointed out, people don't care. Is it going to cut into the bottom line? Are people not going to come through their gates on a $100, $200, $300 ticket, whatever the going rate is these days because, man, I miss kickoff returns? No, nobody's not going to show up because they don't have kickoff returns. Are they not going to do unbelievable off-the-chart television numbers compared to everything else on TV today because the game is a little more boring than it used to be. No, they've been doing it for years, and the numbers still hold up. And the billions continue to roll in from the networks that are willing to pay those money. So they don't have to. They could admit it. You and I can talk about it here on Birds 365. You're not going to get Jeff Lurie on the record to go, yeah, I know the game isn't as exciting as it used to be because we've cut back on the number of plays where players are certainly at risk and head injuries and the like because we want to protect ourselves. And you guys just lap it up anyway. So sorry about that. We got to cover our own legal backside here because you guys haven't told us we can't.
Yeah, I like your description. You'll lap it up anyway. That's where they are. That's where the league is. And they're right. They'll lap it up anyway. But yeah, what I said before, look, I agree with you. They have somewhat lowered head injuries. Okay. But that's part of my hypocrisy. When people talk about safety, then don't use the word safety. Say head injuries. Because in a lot of ways, this game is more dangerous than it's ever been as far as significant injuries. One of the reasons I think, for instance, is, these ramp up periods that they've talked about. Nobody does anything. And all of a sudden, it starts September, whatever, 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever. Yeah, it's always about money. You're right,
You know what
Jody.
that is, John.
September, whenever. All right, now go. Don't do anything. Now go. Full speed, 100, and boom, Achilles, pec. I've never seen so many damn Achilles injuries. I don't remember as many. Now, people have done the studies. Nobody cares about those studies. Nobody cares about the ACL studies. And when I say nobody, there's a few people. All they care about is head injuries. And look, I get it, but then talk about head injuries. We're trying to limit head injuries, but go rip off each other's limbs. That's fine. And that's what when I talk about hypocrisy, that's what I mean. Safety is not a synonym for head injuries. Safety is safety in my method. And all they're trying to do is limit the litigation for future head injuries. And that's where, look, you're right, because, and that's why I bring up the difference between a 25-year-old and a 55-year-old. When you're 25 and you get your bell rung, you don't give a crap. You're Malcolm Jenkins trying to get back on the field. You're trying to win. When you're 55, you can't remember where your keys are, and you start to wonder, what did I do to my body? It's different. I don't know how you fix that. Smarter people than me can't fix that, but there is the hypocrisy part. And that's why I said, look, Jody, don't box, right? If you don't want problems later in life when it comes to cognitive issues, I would recommend not boxing. I would also recommend that's a perfect example, because you're going to get the what beat out of you. But I would also recommend, if you're worried about that later in life, don't play professional football if you have the opportunity. But it's hard for young people to make that cost benefit analysis.
And it hasn't. We've seen a slight reduction in youth football around the country, but it hasn't had a major impact. I've not seen the talent drop in the National Football League. Level of stars, athletic players coming into the league, I think it's as good as it's ever been, even though the just gross numbers of youth football teams around the country have come down. The star players are still doing it, and they're still going to put their bodies at risk to have themselves NFL careers. And speaking of work, your point about the fact that they just work less in the National Football League now. Why? Because they negotiated it into the CBA, and the players could call that a victory. Hey, we don't have to practice as much as we used to. We're not getting quite as big a piece of the financial pie as we want, but at least we're not working as many hours. God bless them if the players' union thinks that that's a victory. The owners will give you that many less hours every time you turn around if you'll accept a smaller piece of the overall financial pie. Eagles are actually getting a little work in this week, John. optional training activity week? Phase
They're in
2
the
is what they're calling it.
second phase of OTAs. They're May 31st, I think, is their first on-field official OTA, sort of pseudo practice where they'll be running some, 7-on-7 drills. Nick Sirianni's already said they're not going to do any team drills in OTAs, but May 31st is their first on-field official phase 3 OTA. They have a couple early in June as well. And then they'll be off until training camp. Going down there today, they're going to have some media availability because next Tuesday is going to be their first phase 3 on-field OTA.
Okay, so what exactly, as best you know, are they doing today, tomorrow, whatever? It's not organized. It's not team. Is it foul shooting? Is it tiddlywinks?
No,
What?
yeah, I mean, they put some video out there. There's guys running routes and working on technique and fundamentals, and things like that. Group instruction, individual drills, they're allowed to do a little bit about, but there's no team drills, which the Eagles aren't doing anyway. There's no even, and by team drills, typically when you say that, you think of 11 on 11, but you also can't do any 7-on-7s, 9-on-7s, any traditional practice NFL mode. So that doesn't come until phase 3. Phase 2 is more conditioning, teaching, individual drills, fundamental stuff.
Do we know for a fact that Aaron Sipas is in attendance this week because he is the lone punter for the Philadelphia? What drills does he do at a workout like this to prove that he still should be the Eagles punter at this stage?
I'm sure Aaron is there. I haven't seen him, but I'm sure he's there because why wouldn't he be there? But
Aaron Donald should be at the Rams ones, and from what I understand, he's not. So it's not a given that everybody's going to show up, John. You can't just assume that somebody's going to show up, John.
Yeah, that's true. But I think Aaron's got a little more cachet to go shopping for sconces than Aaron Cepas. Although I will say, maybe I just talked about they don't do enough. Maybe in Aaron Cepas's case, they should be resting his leg because he was pretty good early in the season.
You think he ran out of gas? Is that what happened to him in December?
He ran out of gas. I think he ran out of gas. He looked like he had a dead leg, Jody. Ran out of gas.
I'll buy dead arms for pitchers in baseball. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Well, why not? You can have a dead leg. Why? If you can have a dead arm, why can't you have a dead leg?
Because there's a lot more stress on an arm when you're throwing a baseball than it is when you're punting a football. No, I'm not buying the dead leg theory. Sorry about that. There are certain guys who
I think when Aaron, in all seriousness, I think when he was trying to make the team, he's probably kicking more than he should have. And a lot of that is, off to the side. He would go to some practice fields in South Jersey and kick with Rick Lobato and Jake Elliott. He was probably kicking too much leading up to the season, but that's just a thought, a theory.
See, but this ties into the whole big conversation we're having. Then what would you actually like to see Aaron Sipas do?
I'd like to see him in his shirt, the chemistry.
Less? If he's kicking less, how do you know that he's even going to be up to the job when we don't get much workout and practices with teams as a group to begin with? I got no idea whether Aaron Sipas is going to be a legitimate NFL punter this year. I'd like to see some evidence of that, but you're telling me no. He's got to do less because he had a dead leg last year.
Well, I'm very surprised that the Eagles didn't bring in competition. 90-man offseason roster. Why not? Why not bring in some competition? And they would tell you that, well, the competition, we're watching everybody else when training camp, and they'll get to see other punters. And they can bring in it's one of those positions where if you do need to replace somebody, they feel they can do it like right away. Like, 3 days and they're ready to go.
On the fly. Yes. We got off on a little punting tangent. I promise to our next
Pat
guest.
Leonard's in the green room. They're talking about punters.
I promise to our next guest, Pat Leonard, that my first question will not be, how is the Giant punting situation?
I might go punting.
We
Pat,
will
get
table
ready.
that conversation with Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News. He's going to join us next here on Birds 365.